Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Auto World. I'm Jamie Butters, Executive Editor of Automotive News and host of the Daily Drive podcast. Welcome to this Automotive News live chat from our studio in Detroit's Brewery Park, home of Automotive News and Crane Communications. For the better part of 2 weeks, CDK Global's DMS was down, a victim of ransomware cyber attack. Its 15,000 some dealer customers were unable to operate in their normal digitally interconnected ways. Many turned to pen and paper as best they could. Some tried other companies' software as a temporary workaround, perhaps leading to a switching of providers at some point. CDK said it thought it could get all of its clients up and running by July 4th and pretty much got it done by the 2nd. That was nice, I suppose, but it was after what should have been the close of the month, quarter, and first half of the year. It's a pretty inconvenient time. CDK paid the ransom, which may have allowed it to resume service more quickly, but it also may encourage further attacks on auto dealers and their vendors. The crisis is over and the recovery is well underway. So what do we still need to know? What's been learned? And what can dealers and vendors do to protect themselves and each other going forward? I'm joined today by Mark Hollmer, the Automotive News reporter who focuses on retail technology. He happens to be in Berlin this week. Hi, Mark. Guten Abend.
Hey, guten Abend.
We're joined today by a great collection of guests who can share their insights on this situation. Judy Farcus Serra is COO of Headquarter Automotive in Florida. She also serves as the group's finance chief. Hello, Judy.
Hello.
Good to have you here. Justin Shanken is CEO of Blackbreach, which provides cybersecurity services for auto dealerships. He's a former counterintelligence special agent, first with the U.S. Army, then the Department of Defense, now based in Atlanta. Justin, welcome.
Thank you, Jamie.
And Ian Hunter is Assistant Vice President of Sales for JM&A Group, the F&I experts with 3,800 dealership clients all over the country and a business that is intimately tied into dealerships' digital retail practices. Ian, good to have you here.
Hey, good morning, Jamie.
We're going to have a great conversation today, and we want the audience to be a part of it. If you have comments, you can drop them in the chat, or even better, let us know if you have any questions. Put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get you an answer. Judy, let me start with you. How's business? Are you fully recovered?
We are fully recovered. We have, obviously, our OEM integration's not up yet, but we have managed to get over 5,000 transactions, service and parts transactions entered into our DMS. Actually closed Hyundai. 2 of our dealerships are done. They finished getting thousands and thousands of lines of parts numbers. Even Friday night, 3 of our stores did. And today, last night was the last night of our larger store. So it's been a big undertaking for a lot of people that have worked nonstop. You know, we had 4th of July, which we kind of worked through it. We had to. And I have to give a good shout out to our team, because this was, and like everybody else watching, I'm sure, an undertaking.
Yeah, I'm sure. So you had to work, your team had to work all through the holiday just to get ready to for the busy sales weekend, right? Was that kind of back to normal, for at least from the customer's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we operated early on pretty normal. I mean, I guess we kicked the ground a few times and said, how are we going to do this? And between our 4 dealerships, they kind of all operate a little differently. We have different GMs in the stores and they have their things, but they were gritty and just figured it out. We have so many different third parties that helped us get these transactions done that it was impressive, honestly, really impressive. And we leaned hard on Darwin, which I'm sure Ian will have a lot to say about it. That allowed us to sell finance products through our JM&A partner. And then we had the connection with Route 1 and DealerTrack at our stores. We have used both, which are obviously different companies, which allowed us to continue our finance process. We used Dealer DMV for our tag and title work, which we weren't a part of unfortunately down with the CDK solution of tag and title. So we were really able to kind of just manually connect all of these third parties in order to complete transactions. I'm sure it wasn't as efficient and speedy as our normal, but we got it done. And service and parts they shipped us boxes of ROs and we handwritten them, wrote them, and I haven't seen those since 1986.
Yeah, Jamie, I would just say, echoing Judy's sentiments, and obviously to herself and the leadership there at Headquarter, but the industry just saw once again the innovation, the adaptability, and the resiliency of the dealer body that is preached so often, regardless of the event. And I think this was another one. I believe that there's learnings from it. I'm sure we'll talk about today as we kind of take the windshield look to this deal and learn from the rearview mirror. But also, to Judy's point, I think there should be great consideration and appreciation for those teammates that were in the store, from the sales floors to the service advisors, those F&I managers that saw the deal stacking up and the paperwork maybe that had been digital that we hadn't quite seen all those sheets before. There was just a lot to be grateful for, and certainly that thanks and sentiment I know has been shed throughout the industry.
Mark, you want to jump in?
Oh, let's get started with the questions, you mean? For sure. I thought it would be good to maybe try to apply some perspective to this. So my first question to Judy, or actually let's start with Justin. How serious is a cybersecurity shutdown to a business? If you could put that in perspective.
Sure. Well, I guess it depends on the incident, but as we're relating to CDK, extraordinary, right? So in this case, it was a choke point that affected 15,000, right? And affected the overall GDP of the US. So extraordinarily. I think for the day-to-day, it's equally devastating. And I think Judy can probably speak on this more, but there's the operational cost of just the shutdown. If it's a ransomware incident we're talking about, there's the cost of ransomware. There's the cost of basically forensics, IT, backup, whatever could be involved in that if things are broken. There's the legal liability, which is kind of the secondary and tertiary costs that are going to come from breaches. It could be from a fine. And what we've seen recently is actually the class action suits. So it's kind of the unfortunate gift that keeps on giving. And even when you're up and running, one thing we try to have, and hopefully the listeners out there that are hearing this now, it is so much more cost effective in prevention. And it does exist. And I do want to say this. People keep hearing over and over, we start to become numb to these types of attacks because there's so many of them. And if they affect you personally, we then start to listen. But frankly, there are ways to prevent ransomware. It's not one of these concepts that you just can't do.
Fair enough. Judy, you and I spoke in the thick of this when things looked like there was no end in sight. We spoke toward the end when you got turned back on. So how serious did that feel to you when this was happening?
I mean, it was very serious. The first 24 hours, we were just, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And we started just, hunkering down and making, putting a plan in place. I started with a lot of communication with our team, and I know comments with you and I when we spoke about communication from CDK, and I'm sure they were doing their best, and there's plenty of amazing, good people at CDK, and they were doing their best to communicate what they could, how they could. I'm sure that Justin could speak more on what they should say and shouldn't say. I mean, they're dealing with a situation. Maybe expectations were a little different from a lot of dealers, including myself. I mean, I wasn't furious, but I was like, can we have regular updates? Like, we get sporadic updates. I regularly notified my group, morning, noon, and night, every single day. Here's what's going on. Even if we didn't have a change, people like to hear that things are moving, things are going on. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to do. This is what we think we're going to do. So, this helped us just kind of work on the fly, work on a pivot. And, the first things I brought a Zoom together, brought all our leadership from all our dealerships. We talked about it. We're calm, just optimistic, we can do this. And then following that, once our accounting people were basically done filing everything they could possibly file and refile, and I'm like, let's help operations. Let's see what we can do for them that are struggling. And they also helped me document all their offline processes. So now we kind of have an offline process playbook that was developed because of this crisis. And the real cool thing
I'm sorry.
No, the real cool thing about the process that once we went through it, I kind of just segmented each of the 4 dealerships. So each department got its own 4 dealerships advice of it. I didn't want to standardize. I wasn't about, as a leader to like press my people when they're in the weeds, they're going, they're doing it, but give them all best practices because they can pick up a couple of hints from the other store. Oh, they're doing it like that. Oh, they're using Goobagoo, or they're using My Desk Log for that. Or so just trying to share those best processes to keep our continuity going, even though we didn't have our, our normal flow. And I mean, even early on, so we had our pay date like right when this happened. So we had a whole 2 weeks out until payday again. And even a day or two after that, I'm like, I'm sending out a contingency for payroll because that's the first thing people start worrying about. Are they going to get paid? So put that out there. Here's what we're going to do. So just ease our team, the front line, everybody, you're going to get paid.
Understood. But I bet nobody really slept much though as you went through that.
Yeah, not too much sleep, no.
Yeah, for sure. Ian, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, there was, numerous good points from Judy's perspective. We're grateful. We have a nearly 300 associate field footprint across the country. And so that allowed us to kind of keep our ears to the ground and thumbprints on that. We tried to increase our store visits to those locations that we knew, obviously, that had CDK as their DMS. And what was interesting coming off of clearly kind of the post-COVID, as we talk about, particularly from a salesperson perspective, many of these associates in stores are just getting back into what negotiations look like coming off of that pandemic. And now they had never penciled a deal. And so, our associates try to take some of that experience and expertise and be a hands-on approach to those particular locations. And I think, also to that point, something that we tried to do is collaborate with store leadership to develop, as Judy kind of mentioned, like new standard operating procedures for what that time took. And one of the things that we tried to do in play is, the idea of commander's intent. And commander's intent, you're not necessarily going to know exactly what the commander would want you to do at any particular time, but what the intent is, what the vision is, and the autonomy for these leaders to be able to make decisions that were best for the dealership, as well as trying to provide a consumer experience and sale, I think proved to be fruitful and showed and shared a lot of best practices that I know will carry out through. And I'm sure we'll talk about learnings here in a bit.
So I'd like to piggyback real quick on Ian's comments. So this was a great example. So according to the FTC, and we have this in cybersecurity anyway, is incident response plan. You have to have an incident response plan. It's part of the FTC safeguards. Now that incident response plan is predicated on a cybersecurity incident, right? Okay, we were hit, et cetera. Well, that's a little different here. It was really CDK that was hit, but this spills off into what we have for any type of incident response triage. So either from a leadership perspective, right, of, hey, we are not able to sell cars. What do we do about that, right? With an incident response plan, you're asking, who are the first people we talk to? Is it our customers? Is it our insurance? Is it our board? Is it our employees? And one of the things that are required that we sit down and put together and is needed not only from a cybersecurity perspective, but this is a great example for any type of incident. It's much broader than just that, because in the Army, we say train as you fight, right? Well, now we all got this 15,000 at one time. Boom. What are we doing? And so, frankly, this gives everyone the opportunity. Now, that's not a one size fits all, right? Each organization is going to have their own different nuances and SOPs, standard operating procedures. But frankly, they're important to go through and have these tabletop exercises to practice these in the future to be as best prepared as we can.
We have a question, Mark. We have a question from the audience I want to get to. Justin, you mentioned earlier that there are things that companies can do to protect themselves from ransomware. Alex Wilson in our audience asks, I've observed cyber attacks trigger a call to insource. Do you anticipate OEMs dictating usage of their own tools going forward?
Is this addressed to me first?
This is for everyone, but I would start with you since you mentioned some of the things that can be done to mitigate risk. And then we can swing around to everybody else.
I have handled a lot of triage in my years. And usually what we see in an aftermath is everyone attempts to take a deep breath. And I think OEMs are doing the same thing, but are also starting to go, hey, How, as leaders, can we not be affected by this again? Now, does that make an OEM a tech shop, a Google? Maybe not, right? I know that they've struggled with that in the past, and you do need some technical expertise at this. Does that mean that they partner with entities like us? There have been some talks of that, right? Of bringing in certain shops to help with that. But I think each OEM is going to sit down and almost create their own. I think the number one thing that will come out of this is trust. How do we regain that trust with our dealerships and with our clients and with our, selling our vehicles, frankly? And that's going to be the overall topic.
Ian, Judy, anything to add to that?
I'd like to just, I think the manufacturers or OEMs are going to look strong and hard. And as far as like allowing us to use outside vendors, it's a strict process. It's getting more and more defined to where we can, which vendors and which service providers we can use. But I think they're going to look at it even more so. Okay, so the CDKs, the big guys, the Cox, everybody's approved. But I don't think that's where they want us to be. I think having the redundancy and having these third parties, these smaller companies that are able to be nimble also and deploy support in these crises. That's another thing. So, if one big entity gets hit, how are they going to support everybody all at the same time? I feel like mitigating the risk out to more solutions would be better for the industry, in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of great points there. And, obviously that's to be determined as far as what comes out. I think there will be, to Justin's point, some deep breath and learning coming from it. There will also probably be some knee-jerk reactions, as is typical, to try to swing the pendulum back the other direction and take advantage of that. And I think from, the OEM's perspective, when you think about just digital retailing tools, they're putting them out to large or any size automotive groups and dealers. And it's kind of that construct that Judy is talking about, is how do we, now that we've learned, if you have all of your tech stack or your infrastructure built solely on one foundation and something like this happens, obviously it's crippling. On the other side, particularly before we ran into this large of an incident, you were trying to define what a seamless consumer experience looked like, and that omni-channel thought of they're starting online and finishing in store. And, we were learning, particularly in a lot of the collaboration we were doing with our dealers, were how do we make it more seamless? How do we take a consumer from home and their couch to the in-store and finalize that experience, or just do it all digitally? And so, there's a little bit of rigor, and I think that will be a decision that dealers will have in the future, and maybe OEMs will be weighing in on, is how do we take a seamless experience and negate that, or negotiate that against one in which we're not crippled by one big solid foundation that we're all built on.
Jamie, I do want to say this, though, whether it come from the OEM or from smaller organizations like Judy was saying, you can still prevent it by getting in front of it. That this is not a new concept, right? This isn't just something, but it does require time. It is not something you can just plug and play. You have to come in and develop these things and be able to establish that. And that's how you're creating your, for lack of a better term, guns, gates, guards, and protecting your organization prior to these incidents. So,
but we all want instant gratification.
Yeah, it's true.
It's tough. I'm sure you're absolutely right. Hey, I have a question from the audience, and I'm not sure I even fully understand it. And so I don't know, maybe Judy or one of you can unpack the jargon for me. I don't know what price tapes are. Preston Dahl is asking, do we have any idea when price tapes will update? So what are they? And do we have any idea when they'll update?
So I do know that, I spoke with SET, since we're a SET Toyota dealer, others are with TMS and the other distributors, but they are still certifying. So they're not going to allow parts, there's no integration still for warranty download, parts tapes, which is the parts pricing catalog, so that we have updates to the parts. So we're doing everything manually. I actually just walked by my warranty clerk the other day, and he's like, chink, 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 chink. And, we only do, 3,000 a month. And yeah, I'm like, anyway, yeah, it's, I don't know. They said who I asked at SET, we're working on it. Can't give a date. Hoping, I always have a feel. I feel it's 2 weeks, but I don't know if that's right. That's just a feel. Could be one.
Fair.
Yeah, I think as with
Ian,
most
did you have
things,
it?
Jamie, there's kind of up to the minute updates happening. I received an email just prior to getting on this. Again, I think obviously CDK is back up and running for near everyone. We've heard that OEM leads are now coming back in accurately, but again, a lot of the third-party integration is still waiting. Obviously, on the JM&A side, one of the things we pride ourselves on is helping in performance and consultation with our dealers. And, some of those performance tools are obviously we're still awaiting. That was the email I got before, as one of them seems to be back up now. And so to Judy's point earlier, and I give an applause to the dealers that did this, but taking the risk and the fear out of pay, because a lot of those performance tools are how they measure whether it's an F&I manager's pay, et cetera, and they kind of remove metrics to be able to do such. But I think it's an up to the minute thing that is we're just trying to stay updated on what is coming back in. But that's really those third-party integrations are the one that seem to be the weight now.
Well, along those lines, I'm wondering if you have a sense of how much longer it's going to take for all of these third-party integrations and other software. And the second part of that, I'm wondering, is how is this impacting dealership business at this point? Judy, let's start with you.
Again, so we're doing a lot of this, everything manually. From reporting vehicles, we sell 1,000 cars a month at our group. So hand punching in, information instead of uploading it. Warranty claims, thousands of warranty claims, punching in part number by part number. One warranty claim could have 45 part numbers, and part numbers are long. They're 10, 12, 9 digits long, letters, dashes, numbers. So there's going to be a big stress on our teams just to keep on trying to get stuff in. So hopefully, again, like I'm hoping within 2 weeks it gets done, or else, we'll resource our people. We'll push people over to help those people that are, pushed into this manual zone until it's working again.
The one thing there's no sign yet, though, in terms of a time frame. It feels like it's guesswork stuff.
They're so active, and I'm confident of that. And that's probably would be a nice thing that somebody CDK could maybe put out, a daily or twice a day. We're in talks. We've moved up 3 notches. I don't know. Maybe Justin can say they can't. It's not a good idea, but some kind of update with that, because that's a big question mark, and it's a good one.
I actually would like to make a comment on updates in general. So one thing that is a struggle with, so we protect a lot of dealers in the cybersecurity realm and the FTC piece, but you have to realize CDK is not our client. So we still relied on our dealerships to pass said updates. Now, we also had to deal with phishing attacks, because right now, every bad guy and bad gal is using CDK as the click here. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of the updates we were getting, we were going, no, that's not a real update, right? So that's been confusing. The other thing that we've had to really focus on is it's been up to the dealers who are clients to CDK or customers to them to pass that on. They do not owe anything to Black Breach for our example. Now, were we still communicating with them and online? We were doing the best we could, but there was a lot going on. So I do want to kind of, as we talk about these updates, make sure you're communicating with whoever your vendors or whoever it's just so many different things of what you've heard or not, or what's brought in, to make sure, one, it gets vetted, that it's proper information, but two, that it don't assume that they have it also, because that's just frankly was not the case.
Yeah. When I was communicating with our stores, I said, I'm single point of contact. That's it. Don't communicate with CDK. I'm only dealing with people I know.
But Ian, with your with the CDK customers that you work with, are you hearing a similar impairment? Yes, the DNS system is back up, but are there still a lot of struggles?
Yeah, exactly right. Judy touched on it nicely. There's just a lot of duplicate entries. It takes a lot to do a deal. We rely on a lot of systems that we obviously learned, and those integrations are what make it more of a seamless experience. But when that foundation is cracked, as I mentioned earlier, it certainly takes away the efficiency in which we can do it. I think we're still being as effective as we can, but it just takes time. And I think that's where, with these third-party integrations, once they are back up, it will be as much as business as usual as we can be. But certainly, and I mentioned the performance reporting tools that we rely on a lot for our training and consulting. That we're still awaiting those. There's a lot of backlog data. Jamie opened up with it, but the timing wasn't necessarily ideal. I don't think any time would have been great, but if you talk to certain people, they probably would have wanted the beginning or middle of the month versus the end of the month, and coming into a holiday sales weekend here in the summertime when sales are strong. But yeah, I think it's a day by day learning. Justin's spot on. These people, they're very opportunistic. And so they see these opportunities, these phishing scams, et cetera. It's just going to highlight a lot of the things that have been talked about over years. And I'm sure leadership and general counsels and IT teams have been trying to educate. And a lot of times when instances or events like this hit home close, we take them serious and we react to them. And I'm sure this industry event will be no different.
Understood.
Okay, Mark, I'm sorry, we're just about out of time. I want to make sure to cover some things. We do have a few more questions, so we're not quite done. But I want to update the audience on a few things going on at Automotive News. We have a new awards program. It's a collaboration with our outstanding colleagues at AdAge, the Global Automotive Marketing Awards. The Gammas, we're going to call them, which we're trying out that name, will recognize groundbreaking campaigns that drive business growth and make a substantial and measurable impact for automakers, mobility providers, and yes, dealers too. You can see all the details at autonews.com/auto awards. The deadline is 5 p.m. on September 23rd, and you have to get them in by then because then you can turn your attention to the Automotive News Congress, which is September 23rd and 24th. Speakers will include GM North America President Marisa West, VW of America CEO Pablo Deci, NADA President Mike Stanton, and Ford Model E COO Marin Jaya among our great speakers. It's going to be out at the M1 in Pontiac. Should be great. We have some other cool stuff lined up, but I can't tell you about it yet. I think it's going to be really great, though. Ford Motor Company is our host sponsor. If you sign up now, you can get the early bird pricing. I just checked this morning. It's still there at the discounted rate. There's a link to that on my LinkedIn page, or you can also, we'll try to get it posted in the chat. Please also let us know your nominations for the 2025 list of the 100 leading women in the North American auto industry. We've been doing this every 5 years since 2000. Go to autonews.com/leadingwomen2025 to nominate someone or apply. The nomination site closes August 12th. Okay, that's about enough on what I'm going to be doing with the rest of my year. We still have a lot of questions in the queue, though. Judy, Justin, Ian, can you stick around with us a little past the bottom of the hour?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Sure.
Great. Okay. Let's see. We've got a question here asking, and I think I know we don't know the answer, but let's try to piece it apart. I mean, do we know if any customer data was exposed as a result of this cyber attack? Maybe Justin, we'll start with you since it is would you suspect that there was? Where do we stand on that?
So I do not have any inside knowledge, so let me start with that. But I will say this: unfortunately, when we deal with cyber criminals, and this should be no real surprise to everyone, they are criminals, and so their goal is to be paid twice. So there's once will be the ransomware, and then the second time is to release the information, regardless if paid or not, traditionally, to the dark web, and then they sell that list. Okay. Could be piecemealed, highest bidder, et cetera, depending. I have not seen that yet. And I'm sure there's a lot of organizations that are trying to do their best to prevent that. However, I would not be surprised to see that customer list find its way there, regardless of what happened with CDK or the PAM.
Judy, Ian, anything you want to add on that?
That was my biggest fear in the day moment one. What am I going to do? How am I going to protect my customers? When am I going to notice them? How am I going to comply with FTC? How am I going to do all the things I need to do? And so that got me. That was my frantic part of the beginning, as Mark tried to bring me back to that. It was hard to. I put away those type of feelings, but yeah, it was rough. I mean, I called my cyber carrier and reported it because I'm like, I need to just make sure I'm doing the right thing for my customers and my associates that work here. We're all in the computer in the DMS. So, from their end, we did everything we could. I sent them everything I had, and they're like, at this point, wait and see. And, obviously CDK is being great and upfront, saying they're going to notice customers. FTC apparently has granted them that. They've only seen that in a notification from CDK. I haven't seen anything like official from the FTC, but I'm certain they're being upfront with that. We still have state laws to deal with that I think we all have to also be aware of. Hopefully we'll have some more protection from CDK if we need to go that route. But it's certainly it's the largest concern at this point.
My recommendation, just to say, if you possibly have credentials that could have posted on this, I don't know what will come out of the CDK information. We just don't know. Change those credentials now, because that's essentially what cyber criminals are buying, right? Now, don't get me wrong, from victims that are customers, yes, there is some value in, credit checks, date of birth, such. But if there are credentials there and you are using credentials to lock in the CDK, it's extraordinarily easy to change those now, because that's how, when we do penetration tests and we essentially good guys doing the hacking, those are the things that we're looking for. We want credentials to be able to log in and to be able to utilize that. And it's such an easy measure to just change across the board. So whatever does make its way to the dark web is, in theory, already old news.
And this year I've been actually working really hard on our cyber protection, and I actually hired a third party. VTech actually came in and did an assessment for me before this even happened. So it's definitely something we need to invest in. We need, you have a great IT company probably staffed at your store. It doesn't hurt to get a third party in, like Justin's or like VTech, one of these companies that can come in and just give you a third set of eyes to help make sure that you're doing everything you can at your dealership to prevent an internal ransomware or any kind of cyber event.
We partner with VTech. They're great folks.
Yeah, they're great.
The folks, there's a small community that's really trying to band together and utilize and piggyback our resources, because frankly, it's a security stack, right? Everyone has different lanes, and this is in business. I don't do my own taxes, right? I pay someone to do my taxes. I'm not going to do that. So it's the same type of concept. But those are, that's great, Judy, to hear that. And I encourage everyone else to consider something similar.
We have another question from the audience. Actually, I'm going to direct it to Mark. It's asking, has this affected only CDK North America, and is Europe affected? I wasn't, does CDK have much business in Europe? And I guess, was it safe?
It doesn't. CDK is North America, so Canada and the US.
Okay. Good to know.
But that said, it's certainly quite profound how many people were affected.
Yeah, and over in Europe, you would have to deal with GDPR, and their protections for cyber are much more stringent than we have in America.
Wow.
And oh yes, we're a little bit behind on a lot of this that we're kind of catching up on. Not to say that they're all right or wrong, but it's a very different game when you're dealing with the EU.
Is that set a sort of a role model or a template for what companies or the government here should pursue?
I think the best role model we have is actually Department of Defense. The DoD has come out with new regulations for DoD contracting called CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. DoD is the biggest entity in the government, right? So everybody kind of tips their hat to them to go, hey, if you're not just looking at NIST or ISO or some of these other frameworks, this CMMC was created as kind of like a framework that's much more specific. It's not theoretical. It's you do this. It's more compliance, check the box. And that's very DoD, Army, military kind of thought. But frankly, I think the U.S. needs that. I think there's a lot of folks that really need that kind of walkthrough. So we have our own. However, talking about what the EU has done, they have done great things protecting consumer data. However, that can go the other way too. It can become problematic where even as penetration let me give you a great example. As pen testers, sometimes we have to get certain things signed off on just to do it for the good guys, right? So it can go the other way if we're not careful, if you use too wide of a stroke.
Justin, we have a sort of philosophical But also pragmatic question from George in the audience. Why would an organization pay a ransom? Would you recommend it? Of course, there's trade-offs. George is saying he thinks there should be backups that can be restored, rather than paying a ransom. And is that right? So
Let's
I know
discuss that.
you've sent us a detailed flow
Sure.
chart of thoughts on that.
First, I can't ever say to pay or not. It's very circumstantial. So let me start there. Second, when you discuss backups, you're now breaking down the difference between IT and cybersecurity. Okay, and they are different. They're both equally important, and we've kind of discussed this before. But let's put it this way: if I am hacking into you and putting ransomware in there, I know of backups. That's not a new concept. So don't you think I'm going to the backups first before we activate this? And if I were a guessing man with the CDK incident, if I remember right, didn't it happen where they said, we're good, we're back down?
Yep.
That's why with our SOC and how we protect our people, we actually put a buffer on it. We did not allow, even if the client comes out of CDK, says they're good, in this case, we wait 3 hours because this is very common. And so we don't want to open that where they think they can go to backups. Well, cyber criminals are no fools, right? So yes, in some cases, maybe backups could work, but it's challenging. So let's address the should I pay ransomware. First, I'm not going to just formally say yay or nay, but you have to understand one thing I do want to give CDK, the immense pressure they were under. I mean, let's have a little bit of empathy here. The immense pressure that they were under, not only from the US government, I'm sure they had agencies helping, they had the dealership piece. So to try to respond as quickly as possible may lead to, should we pay the ransom? It is unfortunate. However, the repercussions of paying ransomware is more ransomware. They are a business to make money. If they find an industry sector like the automotive industry, that from the outside looking in, the connotation is that there's money there. It's just kind of part of it. There's these names on billboards, Ford and something, whatever it is, Shanken Ford or whatever it is. And there's thoughts of money. So if I'm going to go after those targets and they pay out, it replicates, frankly, and it feeds more into the mindset of we need to continue that.
Justin, I spoke to a few of your peers writing about this very topic about a week and a half ago. And it's interesting to me how consistent you are. I expected people to say never pay the ransom, but none of you say that because there's also, intellectually, there's also merits to, I got to get my business up and running as soon as possible. And however I can do that, I'll do it. And not a single, I spoke to maybe 4 of your peers and none of them voted for one option over the other. And they just basically understanding how complex this is. And there's no perfect decision, whatever you do.
Yeah, I discussed earlier that incident response plan. This actually goes into it. So when you talk about an incident response plan, part of that is if the incident happens to be, in this case, ransomware, who do we talk to first? Who do we this? What would that do for us? And tabletops is what we call this, are very important to kind of walk through that because your insurance, I've heard this many of times and maybe Ian can weigh in. There has been a lot of trauma with just jumping, my insurance, that's who I go to. Well, insurance does not planning on paying out just to pay out and you haven't protected yourself, right? That doesn't make any sense. So I think the realities of walking through this, let alone your particular pressures, let alone your overall liability and risks, all go into that decision-making process of, is this the right thing? But I do want to say this. You can pay the ransom. You can negotiate that. You can get that data back. But there is still no guarantee that that information will not find itself in other sectors, whether on the dark web, sold to a nation state actor, who knows? So you need to move forward, not as the job is done, but as still damage recovery.
Another question
Fair
from
enough.
the audience. Nicholas is asking, he says, based on the information I received, CDK runs rather outdated and simple remote desktop apps, which aren't equipped with and based on recent cyber protection technologies, may even interfere with each other. What is the strategy to ensure cybersecurity specialists and their tech are not defeated by outdated tech loopholes?
So we deal with this nonstop. We have many CDK client or customers that are dealers with CDK, all right, as well as the other DMSs. We work with them on these installs and we have tooling to work around that. But I will say not many times, we do penetration testing for each of our clients. That's part of our FTC package, right? And the expectation. And sometimes, not to say CDK or any others, I'm not going to name names, but we find the way we got in was through a third party, right? Because they have some type of network access. So usually there's a communication on that. Now that shouldn't be a poke in the eye. Things happen, right? There's always updates. But we need to make sure that that open communication is there. And it doesn't need to be what we call like a bug bounty where we expect to be paid. No, it's, hey, we found this. We have experts. We are testing all these different, customers out there, dealers. And so there are workarounds with that. But again, sometimes for us as a cybersecurity vendor, we have to harden that shell knowing that. We cannot control, again, all the vendors that you're dealing with. So it takes it on us as well as a partnership with the dealership themselves on setting up expectation of risk.
Mark, do you have a final question for us to wrap up?
I do. And this goes out to all of you. When is the right time after this to file insurance claims? Ian, let's start with you.
I'll have to defer to Judy of when that one is to start. I don't know. I'm sure our executive team is looking at things, and but more for the dealer body is probably that question. So I'll leave it to Judy.
Yeah, I went back and forth with my broker agent for a while. I'm like, a few days. I'm like, should we do it? Do we need to do it? She goes, let's wait and see. And then I finally said, I'm not getting information. I feel like it's my responsibility to just put them on notice. And you know what? I know that automotive insurance will subrogate. If it's someone else's fault, then the other insurance pays. And I don't know that cyber coverage actually works that way. And obviously, I wasn't the first call. When I called my cyber claim thing, they've already knew. There was already other dealers that have called and put them on notice. They acted fast. They had this people, I don't know, probably Justin knows a Cyber Clan. They were like, boom, let's do a Zoom. I mean, it was like they're all over the world and they jumped on Zoom with me. And I'm like, okay, well, no, nothing's happened here. And then I think it was new to them, but the actual carrier had already known. So, they got me with an attorney just to kind of get it ready. So I guess there's a claim open. I have no activity on it yet. And I don't know how much activity we'll ever have on it. Hopefully we won't have to have any on it. So I'm going to say that I think it's worth it to at least put your carrier on notice. Just give them a report of an incident report. I mean, they're all going to know. There's not that many cyber carriers. I mean, I'm sure it's a small knitted network of carriers.
So I used to write about insurance, and I can tell you from experience, you can count them on basically a hand and a half.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
Now, I will say this, though, to set expectations, the dealers were not victims of ransomware. CDK was victim of ransomware. So if your policy states, and I'm not an insurance expert, but we deal with a lot of insurance pieces. If you go to your insurance agency and say, I was the victim of ransomware via third party through CDK, I don't know how your underwriting or policy may hold up for that. Now, that would be particular on your policy, but I just want to set expectations for you. If you are making a statement that there was a cyber incident, they go, well, to who, right? Where did that actually happen? Did it happen to you? And I think that there's going to be a little bit of a dialogue there of going, well, you were down and there may be other coverage things to look at, but you were not, maybe I'm just assuming here, you were not the victim of the actual incident itself.
Yeah. Don't look to cyber. Don't look to cyber coverage as a mode of just making up for all this. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we have experts,
I
Mark,
think
I would
this is-
say, that deal with it. Not myself, but I guess the terminology that I heard more than that was, it was from, at least from the dealer side or whatnot, is business disruption. So
Exactly. Business interruption insurance covers thing, even though they themselves didn't have a cyber incident, their businesses were interrupted. You all sell thousands and thousands. So that alone tends to be pretty standard coverage. And I think what dealerships may need is a best practices recommendation as to when to pull the trigger. So Judy, what you seem to be saying is as soon as possible.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would put them on notice. That was what my gut told me to do, and I did it. And right now, everybody's just kind of, the attorneys told me to sit and wait. The carrier said sit and wait. Let's see what this investigation, which I don't know. Typically, if it's a month or 6 weeks that it takes to kind of dig in harder, Justin could probably speak more on that. But in the meantime, yeah, for sure, and fortify your cybersecurity and your company. I mean, we also lean on Comply Auto as another partner with penetration tests and phishing tests. And, I actually just went over a phishing results that we had a test, and we had, a couple of users that, caught a grouper, and we have to send them the training modules to keep, it's just front of mind. It's constant. We've deactivated links with our email carrier. I mean, there's like so many layers and steps, as Justin can explain way more and more eloquently than I can.
Just realize, I think one of the things before we finish up is, or at least from this perspective, that we even have a warranty against ransomware. Black Breach has that. Now, there is fine print with that, right? There's things that need to work with the IT. There needs to be, but we have a warranty against ransomware. So I think one of the things that happens is we forget, we look at these and they become so daunting that there's just no way. Every time there's another attack, there's another leak, there's another this, we can't do anything. And the FTC's regulations are trying to get in front of that. And if I were a betting man, I think that those regulations are going to be updated post CDK. I think this will be an opportunity to discuss further vendor management, right? And probably put a finer pin to it. I think we're going to discuss better on what continuous monitoring is, and what we've unfortunately seen out in the community of, well, we just run a software and it works all the time. That's continuous monitoring. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. So, I do think that these things are going to get defined better. And I think that the government is going to regulate this because frankly, I do think that it's going to require that for some folks to really go, well, I'm confused. Is it this or is it that?
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. What a great conversation. Thanks to our production team, Rudy Shork, Tiara Riddick, Terry Kostrowski, Marissa Marcinkowski, and Jake Neer. Special thank you to our guests, Judy Farcus Serra of Headquarter Automotive, Justin Blanken of Black Breach, and Ian Hunter with JM&A. We really appreciate your time and insights. It was great. Thank you. For Mark Hollmer and everyone here at Automotive News, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.